Hi everyone, welcome back to Coffee, Books, and Rain, where we are not actually drinking coffee, but it's a little later in the evening, and so I thought a cup of tea would be really nice. The weather has been up and down and warm and cool, a little bit wet and rainy today, and so my throat and actually my sinuses have been giving me a bit of an issue. I hope I'm not coming down with an upper respiratory infection like I frequently get at this time of year, but I'm really doing my best to stay hydrated and also not get around anybody who's sick. But anyway, I know I don't have the flu or anything like that. I am protected against all of those fun things. But we are talking about books, aren't we? And that's what we do when we come on this channel. Now, you may notice that my background's just a little bit different. I've tried to kind of set it up in, I guess, a more aesthetically pleasing sort of way. So if you like it, please give me a thumbs up. If not, please don't thumbs down it. Just leave in the comments what I could do better. That would be really beneficial. I try not to make it overly busy. I still try to make it book themed related. I do actually have this little unicorn right here, trying to think, right there, the unicorn right here, and this picture back here. The unicorn, I think I picked up at just a store because I just thought it was so incredibly cute, but the picture I got from Meg Schaefer, the author who did The Lost Story, and phenomenal person who me and my co-host had interviewed for on our podcast, but she had the book The Lost Story, and then there was a signed copy that she was doing around Christmas. So that is a print that came with that, as well as another print of, I think, other unicorns, and it may be, I think I was going to put that one in a frame. So anyway, I hope you like my background. I hope it's a little more aesthetically pleasing. Let me know. Please don't dog me too bad. But today we're talking about a good book called Feast and Famine: The Last Great Heir. And I'm very curious as why it's called The Last Great Heir when Feast and Famine on this cover is so incredibly large. Like, if it's going to be called The Last Great Heir, let's make that the bigger part, and then we're going to put Feast and Famine #1 on the bottom. That was just my biggest thing, because when I was looking for this book to review in my NetGalley, I specifically was looking for The Last Great Heir. Well, kind of going by book covers, my eyes kept flying over this cover because it just wasn't grabbing the smaller words. It kept seeing Feast and Famine and then going right past. But Carina is the author of this. It is expected to be released on January 28th of 2025, and I think I give this about a 4.25 stars. I actually had a lot of fun with it. It's YA. I don't think it's a heavy hitter. I think it tries to be a little bit kind of emotional, character growing at times. Sorry, just kind of adjusting. But it is fairly short in its context. I do want to say that my ebook was probably somewhere around 160 pages that I had in my NetGalley app. But it looks as though in paperback it's 288 pages. And again, it does release January 28th of 2025. And so let's dive into the summary. The female heirs of two opposing families must duel to rule the land for the next generation in this dazzling fantasy adventure debut. Merriment Feast's life is one constant party, complete with dazzling gowns and delicious pastries. Well, except for her aunt's physically grueling training, Mary believes it's her responsibility to protect her family's traditions and the power they've held for generations. Rue, Famine, knows that only Feast's benefits from Feast rule. As the heir of the House of Famine, she spends her days studying potion making in an enormous dusty library and learning how to use her magic to help others. Custom dictates that the heirs of Feast and Famine must duel on their 13th birthday. Only one family can rule the land of Foret, and Mary and Rue have been raised as rivals. But as the contest draws near and dangers escalate, their true enemy may be a shared one. Now, I said this is YA. I do see that this is listed as middle grade, which also actually makes a little bit of sense, or makes probably a little bit more sense. If you pick this up, it may feel very whimsical, very light, and I have nothing against middle grade. In fact, I like picking up middle grade and seeing what's out there for that generation of readers. I will pick up anything from kids books, middle grade, YA, and up. I think there is a time and place for each of those. For myself as well, sometimes I just want enjoyment. Sometimes I want the whimsy of like the younger kids' books because they're really cute. I have one coming up that I think is, let me just look at the title real quick. But I know for certain it looks like a middle grade, and I cannot wait because it looks just so stinking adorable. And let us see. Oh, those are my recently reads. I don't want to be in that one. I want to be on my NetGalley shelf because I have quite a few books there that I need to work through. But the book is called Mummy Man and Waffles. And so I'm really cute because I'm really hoping that Waffles is like a little dog or a pet or something. But it looks really fun. The cover's really adorable. And it says it's a non-stop thrill, chill, and slimy spill ride full of creepy crawlers and ludicrous laughs. And it says it's children's fiction / middle grade. So I am so excited to read that because, like I said, I love just fun, silly books. I don't need to read the next great New York Times book every time I pick up a book because I don't feel like my brain always wants that. And because I'm reading so many books so frequently, I also feel like if you stay in that genre of like, just say Kristen Hanna's The Women or The Nightingale or things of that nature that are very heavy and emotional now, all like having their time and place, sure. But a lot of those can be really draining, like especially emotionally. They can sit in your brain sometimes like a brick and give you a book hangover, as some of my podcast co-hosts used to say, where it's almost hard to pick up another book afterwards because you're still left with some of those lingering feelings after reading such a heavy book. And so I personally love picking up books that I can read, feel refreshed, and then just put away. This book, I actually am looking forward to the next book in the series. Now, do I know when that next book comes out? No. Would I love to see this cover rotated where the title is the bigger portion and Feast and Famine is kind of underneath that as like Feast and Famine number 2? That would make more sense to me. So I'm kind of looking, because if I'm looking and I see Feast and Famine and Feast and Famine and Feast and Famine, I may forget that I'm looking for like number 2 and number 3 and think I'm seeing the same book repeated. But so we start by meeting Rue, and Rue has been raised to be, I guess what I would say is very judicious and very studious in her studies. She has been taught by her mother that studying is the only way she's going to succeed at this particular duel that she's supposed to complete on her 13th birthday. Well, she's not given much information by her family members as to what this duel will really consist of. They just keep telling her, well, keep studying and you'll be fine. But they don't really prepare her for what's going to happen in this duel. Like, what are we going to do? Are we going to sling spells back and forth at each other? Are we going to throw potion bottles at each other? Maybe we're just going to like pull out our fists and start punching each other. We don't know. That's what Rue is really concerned about, because all of these things are things she cannot learn in a book. She does seem to be pretty good with potions. She's not great at charms, from what I can remember. But Mary, or Merriment, is a little bit opposite. Mary has been taught a lot more of the physical stuff of like running and fighting and wielding a sword. but she knows very little about book knowledge and the history of Foret and the history of the family lineages and those sorts of things. So they're both kind of at a disadvantage when it comes to understanding what sort of actual tools they're going to need to bring into this fight. And neither of them actually wants to fight. Mary has a sister named Bun, and Rue is an only child. And they really do grow up in very, very different households. Where again, Rue's family is the Famine family. They just live a more lean life. They don't go hungry, but they don't overindulge. They still have their like home, like I think it's called like Wormwood Manor, but they don't actually like overindulge in like sweets and feasts and those sorts of things. Whereas Merriment, of course, part of her name is feast, and so they tend to have all of these sorts of overabundance of just pastries and decadence, gowns, and things of that nature. So, both of these girls are raised in these situations, and neither one of them fully, I don't want to say fully kind of embraces it, because I do think Rue understands that by living this more lean and maybe less abundant life, she knows that it kind of maybe helps the people of Foret a little bit more, whereas Mary, she has never been exposed to the fact that the people of Foret, the people that her family is supposed to be ruling, my fingers are cold. Sorry, I put them inside my sleeves. She doesn't understand that the people of Foret, beyond like the walls of the pastry shops and such, really are hungry. Like they are quite starving. So part of what the Famine family does is create an elixir which helps the people of the town not feel so hungry. They have a special elixir that helps to keep them full when times are so lean, when food is more scarce, and when money is tight. Whereas the Feast family seems to turn a blind eye, and as long as they themselves have the abundance, they don't seem to worry about the people on the outside. And so I think the reader really is encouraged to support the Famine family, because I do think it would also support the larger portion of the town as well. People wouldn't go hungry and things of that nature. They the Feast family is supposed to rule, but they just, again, they don't seem to understand that ruling needs to happen also beyond their walls, instead of just making a rule and then kind of applying it, and then it doesn't do anybody any good. And so Mary quickly learns, as she is kind of preparing for her duel, that this is the real situation going on the outside. And I think she sees the issues with the abundant life she's been living. And she does want to make a change. So, but she's been taught a lot of different things about the Famine family that are also, they're true to an extent, but they're not fully true. And that's where, of course, I don't know if you've already kind of caught onto it, but spoiler alert, but not really spoiler alert. Of course, Rue and Mary are probably going to end up at some point starting to see eye to eye on some things. And then this duel is still going to have to happen. I do think the way that they kind of took these twists and turns was pretty clever. I am intrigued to see what the next books in this series might be about and might be like. We had a good resolution at the end of this book, so I do give this like a 4.25 stars. Again, it's a good middle grade book. There are some questions you're going to be left with at the end, but let's cross our fingers that when we go into the next book, we're going to answer a lot of those questions. Let's just say that demons do exist in this realm, and it does seem like magic is pretty prevalent in this land, but we will have to see, won't we? I think we will. Anyway, I do want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you'll like and subscribe and stick around for more in the future. I try to release these book reviews about every other day. I really planned on having a podcast episode of Books Are Magical available by the end of January, and I just don't think I'm going to make it, but let us cross our fingers. I have the episode already recorded. I already have the next book planned for the next episode I want to review, or the next book I want to do, and I've just got to find a little extra time in between all the other things that I feel like I'm doing, which is not a bad thing. I don't feel overwhelmed. I just feel like my mind has decided to go on little mini vacations every once in a while. And so when I sit down to do one thing, I end up getting up and doing another. I'm sure some of you feel, pretty familiar with that sort of feeling. But anyway, I am working on the podcast, and I am trying to find myself a co-host who can be a fairly regular guest for about once a month, because I want to do 2 episodes a month. I want to do one where it's just me reviewing a book. I want to do a second episode where it's me and the co-host talking about a book that we read read at the same time, so we can come together and talk about it. Should the podcast get fully back on track, I do hope that in the future we will be able to do some author interviews again. That was one of my favorite parts of the podcast, was interviewing authors. And I know the month of February has some phenomenal books coming out. I am just about to record an episode for one of those, and that I plan to release on or around February 1st. And that's crossing fingers. But anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you'll like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next page. I hope you have a great one.